Anything relative, anything that starts and stops, comes and goes, is a non-existent thing. In other words, if we find existence in a fence, it's not the fence that has existence, it's the wood. If we find existence in the wave, it's not the wave that has existence, it's the water. If we find existence in the ocean, it's also not the ocean that has existence, it's the water. You see? If we have a movie, if we find existence in the movie, it's not the movie that has existence, it's the screen. Notice that everything that comes and goes, starts and stops, arises and disappears, finds itself in a greater reality. So something that starts is implicit with something that ends. It cannot start and not end. If it starts, it does end, even if it's in a very, very long time away. Anything that starts ends. And what we find is that the universe, everything in it, think about it like this, the only thing that renders the universe a universe is the objects inside it. Imagine an objectless universe. There would be no universe. There would be no space. There would be no time. Time and space are only relative to the objects that are within it. So when we have the experience of time, we never have the experience of time. There's only the continuous now. So time is like the moment where we think a thought and then another thought takes place. So when we think a thought, for example, there's a thought, then there's a gap, then there's another thought. The gap between the two thoughts was pure timeless eternity, pure consciousness. And the mind's best interpretation of what happened in that gap is then what we think is then the superimposition of time. We think, well, I don't know what took place there. Nothing took place there. It must have been the passage of time. And we start to measure the same infinite eternal now with a movement. We measure it with an object. Back in the day, it was using the shadow of an object in coherence with the sun. Now it's a clock. We just measure it with another object moving. We can only measure time and space in reference to an object. Without an object, time and space do not exist. They have no independent... Time and space only exist in peripheral. They do not exist when you actually look at them. You cannot study time and space because time and space are concepts appropriated to the experience of our reality. So what happens then is that everything takes place in one eternal now, and this eternal now is a timeless, formless, spaceless continuum. Science calls this the field of pure potentiality. Nothing takes place outside it, everything takes place inside it, and because there's no outside or inside it, because there's no outside, there's technically no inside of it. So in the same way that a vase that's made of clay, the vase isn't inside the clay, it's neither outside the clay. The vase doesn't exist. The clay exists. The vase has no existence, it's a temporary name and form of the clay. The clay, being the clay, has no inside or outside experience. Nothing takes place outside of the clay. Nothing takes place inside the clay. The clay is clay. Likewise, consciousness, the pure field of pure potentiality, is reality. And reality has no inside or outside. It's both inside out. So reality is never having any type of start or stop. However, the experience that we have of starting and stopping is the field of relativity. This is the third dimension. So the third dimension basically has what we could call a localized point of view. So instead of the experience of everything, which reality has, if you were to experience just reality by itself, it would be like the experience of everything all at once, and everything cannot take place at the same time if we want to experience it, because if we experience everything all at once, it just looks like nothing. It'd be like a blank screen. So in order to have the experience of anything, we have to have an individual point of view. That individual point of view is what we call the finite mind. This is what our mind is. It's an individual point of view. The mind consists of two things: thought and perception. Perception includes the 5 faculties of our mind, which we call sight, smell, touch, and taste. The body is a center point of those sensations. It doesn't have its own existence. The body is not a body in the way we think it is. If we close our eyes, the body is just a sensation. If we open our eyes, our body is just a color. Color is a thing that is created by the mind. The body doesn't have color. An apple doesn't have red or green. Clouds don't have white. You see, nothing has color. Color is a mind-created experience. When we look at the body doesn't have color, just like no other object has color. So we only know the body as a color and a shape. Well, basically a color. All shape can be reduced to color because you cannot have a color without a shape. And you cannot have a shape without a color. So they are reduced to each other. So the body actually has no size or shape. And even if you go to the direct experience of the body, you find that there is absolutely no size or shape to it. There's no reference. If you just go off your direct experience, the body has no size or shape. The body is a morphing, foam-like quality of cloud, if we want to put it into metaphorical, poetic words, and it has no border. So if you were to take the experience of just your hand right now, there's absolutely no distinction between each finger. When you appropriate the idea of a hand, you will be able to find that because you're superimposing a solid, dense shape. If you take away the concept, your hand doesn't have a size or a shape or a border. You won't be able to find the part where your fingernail starts and the finger begins. You see, you cannot find these borders. You won't be able to find the distance between this finger and this finger. Sight is an appropriated concept which has been explored in science to have no correlation whatsoever. So when we close our eyes, we are literally experiencing a completely different universe to what we think we're experiencing with our eyes open. So when we close our eyes, we see that the body is formless, has no size, has no shape. Then we find that the experience of the world is actually made of the same sense perceptions that we call our mind. For example, when we touch something, an object doesn't have sensation. You see, objects don't have it. We don't open up an object and inside the object find sensation. We never find it. The same as if we were to listen to a sound of an object, if we were to taste an object, smell an object, the object never has the qualities that we actually experience. So if we were to look at an apple, for example, we could taste the apple, but the apple doesn't have the taste. The taste is a mind experience. It's an interpreted experience. Then we go to the smell. The object, again, doesn't have, this is all proven in science, it doesn't have these qualities. Then we go to touch the apple. The apple doesn't have sensation. That's the only thing we know of the apple. It doesn't have inherent in the apple this little thing called sensation that we then touch. We never touch anything other than the experience of a sensation which is not in the apple. So what happens then is we think that there's something in the object that we're experiencing that is inherent in the object, when in fact the only thing we actually experience is purely an experience of our mind. So none of the objects that we experience have the experience that we're actually thinking that we're having. We're only having a mind experience. So the objects we experience, they don't exist. There's no existence of them. Their existence, just like we said that the existence of the existence of the fence is the wood, the existence of the movie is the screen, the existence of the ocean is the water, the existence of the mind is consciousness. Therefore, the existence of our perceptions is consciousness. Therefore, all experience is limited to consciousness. All objects are therefore modulations of consciousness. Therefore, what we call time and what we call space, infinite time, infinite space, or eternal time and infinite space, they are merely the mind's best interpretation of formless, dimensionless, infinite, eternal consciousness. And that's what we appropriate in the gaps of perception where no object takes place. So just to break that down a tiny bit further, what we find is the best interpretation the mind has to interpret an experience that it has no access to, it creates what we call time and space. Space is only there in reference to an object. If there was no object, there would be no space. If thought was an experience, there would be no seeming experience of time. Time is the gap between thoughts. This the infinite gap between thoughts. We superimpose a passage of time, but time never really takes place. So it's not about looking to have a timeless, eternal experience. It's noticing that all we have ever been experiencing is a timeless, eternal experience. The one we're already having is already that. So we don't need to change our experience. We don't need to change ourselves. We just need to see reality with clarity. So therefore, there's no inside world, there's no outside world, there's no inside consciousness, there's no outside consciousness. Consciousness is reality. And even if we take away the consciousness aspect, we could say that existence is reality, the fact of existing. There's no separate objects in this universe. Everything is inherently one. The job is not to remove the sense of duality. The job is to see duality is implicit with non-duality. Duality is implicit with reality. This happens to be where the source of happiness and peace takes place. It takes place in the recognition that what we are is infinite and eternal. That there is no separation between ourself and the world, no separation between ourself and other. Then we can enjoy the beauty of the duality of those relationships when we experience them in the world in that way. The world is both a giving and a receiving, an infinite giving of love, love being the dissolution between subject and object, or love being the dissolution between self and other. We come together as two, we merge together as one, and we dance in that. That's the beauty of life. I have a free community. The link is in the description if you'd like to join. I do one-to-one coaching. I help people for free every single week. So yeah, feel free to join that if you're interested. I'd love to see you there. Have a beautiful day, guys. Take care. Bye.